Okay, kids, this is my Steven's favorite. How does the action slash trigger work video? Um, had a guy comment. He has what I think is an 1894 Steven's favorite, and the hammer isn't working right. So here we are with the hammer completely against the breech block, lever closed. The trigger will move back and forth. When I open the lever, the hammer cams back, and that click you just heard, that was the trigger engaging the half cock notch on the hammer. Then you see the hammer roll back forward a little bit. Now I'm going to close this, and you see there's a gap between the hammer and the breech block. That's because it automatically transferred to the half cock notch, and you'll see now the trigger won't move. It's solid, and we'll see why in a little bit, and the hammer's solid too. So now I can pull it back, but I can't push it forward. And that's the full cock. And then you heard the click and the trigger move. That's it entering the next notch on the hammer. I'm going to take the stock off of it, and I'm going to take the trigger out, the trigger and the hammer out, and I'm going to mount those on the other side here so you can actually see how they engage one another. So I'm going to do that off camera, but I'll tell you about it here. I got the buttstock off here, and you can see this bar here is the mainspring. That's what reacts against the hammer. See, I'm pulling the hammer back, and you see that. And that little spring on the bottom, that thin one right here, is the trigger. You see it moves too because the trigger's moving. And on mine, I don't have it tightened all the way down. You can see it's not completely flat there where the screw is. It just seems like it gets way too tight, way too much spring tension on the hammer. So I never really tighten it completely. But I'm going to take that out to make it easier to get the hammer out, because it's putting a bunch of upward tension on it. It'll make getting the screw out difficult. So, okay, we're back. What I've done, I've taken this piece of thick paper and I basically poked a couple holes in it so I could take the screws for the trigger and the hammer and thread them through the other side of the action. That way they're oriented how they would normally be in the gun, but they're not scratching the side of the thing. So anyway, point out the parts here. I guess the first thing we'll look at is this notch right here. Now this is probably what, if you have an 1894, your hammer should look like this, I think. Anyway, this notch right there is the half cock notch. So if we look at, you see, if we roll the hammer up to where it would be against, like that, see how it lines up with the breech block, like it's would be sitting against it? Okay, your trigger is going to be like this. This spring right here, this guy is going to be pushing down on this surface right here, this little flat. So you'll be able to move the trigger, you should be able to move it back and forth against that spring, and it should just move free. Now, mind you, the spring is pushing the trigger down, so we're going to apply just a little bit. I'm going to support this with my finger, put a little bit of tension on it, and then when you cock the action, what happens? That hammer comes back a little bit, and then it goes into that half cock notch. And you see where that notch is. I'm just going to keep a little pressure on the hammer as though it's the spring, because well, geez, hang on. The hammer spring would normally react right here, be pushing up. In fact, this is what it looks like. You can kind of see on the tip of it where it's been under here pushing up. Okay, but we're not going to have that in. So anyway, so if you're troubleshooting this thing, put a little bit of pressure on there, and you should be able to just slight pressure and work. Come on, get that thing to focus. You can move the trigger back and forth and see it can't slip out of that notch either way. Okay, so we'll apply a little bit of forward pressure to the trigger, just like the spring here would do. And then we'll roll the hammer back like you're cocking it by hand, because that's what you're gonna do. So we pull the hammer back as we're putting forward pressure on the trigger, and a little gritty. And and it just slips in. That's the main, well, whatever you want to call it. That's the notch it sits in when it's cocked and ready to fire. Okay, so if you got the hammer spring, applying some upward pressure, and then you just come down here and you just pull the trigger real nicely, and that's what happens. That's the way it's supposed to work. So what I recommend is take it out, find a screwdriver that fits, so it looks like that screw for the trigger, the one that the viewer had, was all chewed up like it'd been taken apart about 100 times, which makes me question how high that trigger is, how tall it is. It almost looks like it's out of a different gun. Come on. Oh, this darn thing. I don't know. Maybe it's just the way the pictures were, but it didn't look quite right to me. But that's the way the thing should work. Just like that. And I think what, if I remember right, what he said was that it sounded like it was getting to half cock, and then it was just, but the hammer wouldn't move, which I don't. There could be some kind of foreign debris or something broken. The thing to do is take the stock off. Then you can look in the back. And also you can kind of set this thing up like this. That's what I would do before I took it to a gunsmith. Figure out what's broken. If it is a trigger or something, or the hammer's messed up, you can get a new part, put it together, and if it doesn't work, then maybe you can find a competent guy to fit it, file everything, and get it shaped just perfect so it does work. But there's most of the people around today that call themselves gunsmiths are all they do is just put wolf barrels in Glocks and new bolts in AR-15s, and that's about all they do. So anyway, I don't know if that helps, but that at least this, you should be able to, with a little bit of mechanical skill, set this thing up like this on the outside, and so you can verify it's working correctly. And put the paper there so you don't scratch up the nice rusty patina, because you don't want big scratch marks. Anyway, this one is a little bit different. I'm gonna see, you can see here. Hang on. Let me open this. This has got a slightly different extractor. It's got it's hard to see, but it's one width all the way down. And if this looks different, this is not the original barrel. I don't know if it was clear in that other video I made. The only thing Stephen's favorite on this gun is the action and the buttstock over there. The forearm, the barrel, the scope, none of that. That's all something else.